Your vehicle engine dies, the lights go out, and you're on a remote road. And something's in the sky and it's watching you. I'm Cristina Gomez, and today we're breaking down real cases about UFOs that don't just fly by. They reach down and they touch our world. From military records to police files, we're gathering hard evidence of vehicles shutting down, electrical systems failing, and both machines and drivers left with physical marks. These aren't speculations. These are documented cases backed by multiple witnesses and official investigation. The pattern repeats across the globe, leaving us with obviously many more questions than answers. Hello and welcome to this episode of Mysteries with a History, where you'll be taken on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. And with each episode together, we will peel away the layers to look for the truth. Jimmy, it's good to have you back. How have you been?
You caught me by surprise. I could have been doing anything. What? Anyway, it's so good to be back. I am great. How are you, Cristina?
Doing so good. So good.
Let's not break tradition.
Okay.
All right. I know I've been gone, but my memory's still here. Okay. What happened for you to cover such an important subject like we are today with cars, automobiles, engines, motors, electronics that are affected by UFOs? And it makes me wonder, did you have an encounter? Did something cruise over your car?
I wish I
Christina's
did.
got a dually four-wheel drive Ford F-150. And she's got a step ladder that folds out and she jumps up. It's the most ginormous pickup truck. She needs that for the fifth wheel trailer that she's going to be towing around the country. But so is that what happened? Did your truck die?
No, it wasn't me, but I came across a story that someone had told me very recently of actually pretty much of what you explained. He was driving down the road in the middle of nowhere, a remote road, and a UFO hovered right above it. The car stopped. And then as soon as the UFO passed, the car came back up, started working again. And I thought, there are a handful of cases like this. We haven't done a show like that before.
No, we
got
haven't.
to cover it today in honor of Jimmy being back on today's episode of Mysteries with a History.
Fair enough. And we've got a lot to cover. This is going to be a packed show. I'm going to make two opening quick statements that I'm going to get out of the way on the subject. Number one, this tends to be around older historical UFO events, but I don't believe that is the case, as Cristina just said. But the community looks at it that way, and the media looks at it that way, which is fine. But we have to remind everybody, Steven Spielberg had this as a central part of two of his biggest films. One, of course, was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Richard Dreyfuss, Country Road, his work truck, his pickup truck, dies, and the craft is overhead. It's one of the most iconic, historic, greatest scenes in all of Hollywood cinema. We have that, right? And then if we move forward to Spielberg's The War of the Worlds, what happens there, right? That is the central part that sets up Act One in that film. Tom Cruise and his kids get the only running car apparently in New York, and they are able to escape town and start their journey. Why? And they're driving past cars that have stalled and have failed on the freeway and roads and so forth. They're the only survivors with a car driving out of town. This is part of UFO history, and it is represented there. And I think it's very, very important to bring all of that up. last night I was reading J. Allen Hynek's book, The Case for UFOs. And in there are so many. And if you go into an older book, Stringfield and whatever, Kehoe, case after case of cars that stalled. So to kick things off, the first reported instance of a UFO, right, causing any sort of EM effect on a vehicle was in 1909. Yeah. A motorcyclist said that his headlight failed as a light passed overhead, and after it passed him, his headlight came back on. That was in 1909, Cristina. Now, the first case in which an engine stalled was from California in the spring of 1944. According to the APRO Bulletin from 1968, 2 school teachers saw a UFO, saw a light, car stalled. That's 1944. The first case in which a car had to be started after a UFO disappeared from the car was in September of 1952. And that was part of the Flatwoods monster case, by the way, right? They see the monster. It's a family of 4 in a car. They see the monster, car dies, and then they had to restart it. And it only started after the craft left the area. So historically, this has always been here, hasn't it?
It has. It has. And yet we're still asking the questions, why does it happen? So
Yeah.
from your
Well,
understanding, Jimmy, you've spoken
yes.
to hundreds of people. You've covered
Mhm.
cases so similar to this one. What's your speculation on that?
Here's the thing. A lot of reference has been to the electrical systems in cars, and that the older versions of cars where you had magnetos and you had a distributor cap and an alternator and a battery and a couple of wires, that's how an engine ran. It was susceptible to EM and electromagnetic interference. This is true. But today, cars still have to charge their batteries. They still have that same basic principle applied to engine design, but the cars are also more complex. There are so many computers and chips in a car today that you would think that an EM interference would be easier to do and that we would have more of it. Why we don't see as much today, I think it's the type of crafts we are encountering. So I think it's electromagnetic for sure, but now today I think we have different kinds of craft.
I think that's an interesting theory. It's the same kind of deal of how throughout the decades, more shapes have been prevalent than others. You know, saucers were really popular in the 40s into the 50s, and then people started seeing more cigar-shaped craft, delta-shaped craft as the decades progressed. And there's this idea, there's this theory that maybe they're evolving similar to how human technology evolves, with how our trucks have changed over the decades, how our airplanes have changed in looks over the decades as well. So I think what you had mentioned is interesting, and you don't really think about it that often until it's spoken out.
Well, when we look at, I'm gonna turn things over to you, or I can take off with this, but I just set things up for the Levelland, Texas incident, and that case, when we talk about UFOs affecting cars, this is one of the most documented, unbelievable cases in history, and every car in this case died, every one. And when you look at it, let me break this down for everybody so you understand. I'm not going to talk about the incident itself. We're talking about cars today, but on the evening of November 2nd, 1957, it started when 2 immigrant farm workers, right? They call Pedro Saucedo and Joe Salas called the Levelland Police Department to report a UFO sighting. and they claim their truck engine died. All right, as soon as they saw the craft. But it continues. At 10:55 p.m., a married couple driving northeast of Levelland reported that they saw the bright flash of light moving across the sky, and their headlights and radio died for 3 seconds. 5 minutes later, Jose Alvarez claimed he met a strange object sitting on the road 11 miles north of Levelland, and his vehicle's engine died until the object departed. An hour later, 12:05 a.m., a Texas Technological College, now Texas Tech, by the way, student named Newell Wright was driving 10 miles east of Levelland, and his car engine began to sputter. The lights on the dash started to jump. Things started discharging and then went back to normal. And then the motor started cutting out like it was out of gas. The car rolled to a stop. The headlights dimmed. And for several seconds, the lights went out. At 12:15, 10 minutes later, Officer Fowler received another call, this time from a farmer named Frank Williams. He said that he had encountered the brightly glowing object sitting on the road, and as he approached it, his car lights went out and the motor stopped. After that, half hour later, Cristina, Ronald Martin at 12:45 a.m. and James Long at 1:15 a.m., they both reported seeing the lights moving across the road in front of them, and both of their engines and headlights died until the object flew away. This is documented police calls one after another in Levelland. So you have to ask yourself, what is going on? Is it the UFO? Is it electromagnetic? Was it done on purpose? Is it just by coincidence and accident? I don't know. But these reports are all over the place in the 50s and 60s.
Jimmy, today you came with the goods. You came with the timestamps today,
I don't play.
which is awesome. No,
I had 5
no, when
weeks
do you
to
ever?
prep. I had 5 weeks to prep.
Yes, you did. Something else to mention, because we're going to be speeding through these, because what we're really focusing on, as Jimmy I mentioned, is how the vehicles are affected. Some of these cases are well known, some of them lesser so, but we're focusing on one detail that isn't covered as frequently as you would assume. But in this case, when we're looking at Pedro and Joe, Pedro, the guy that we're seeing on screen right here, they also witnessed not only their car engine failing, but this intense heat coming down on them, and their vehicle rocked back and forth as well, which we hear that from time to time, but it's not as frequent. However, for today, it will be. Could you imagine? I mean, I would be genuinely scared if I'm driving down the road, minding my own business, just want to get home, eat dinner, and go to bed. And then not only your car stopping, but then you feel it rocking, vibrating, shaking back and forth. That's enough to beat any cup of coffee for the caffeine. That will keep you up at night.
Well,
And
plus your car is your sanctuary. That's your safe
it's your safe
space.
space.
Yeah, absolutely. In the 1950s, 1960s, I'm sorry, in Ohio, again, one of the more famous cases was the police chase that went into Pennsylvania. It involved Ohio law enforcement and Pennsylvania, 4 different police cruisers chasing this UFO that was shaped like an ice cream cone. One of the police officers said it looked like a football that was cut in half and tipped on its side. So it's like a cone shaped, right? Well, while in Ohio, the police officers had pulled over. There was a stalled car in the road. There was no driver there. But they pulled up to see if they needed some assistance or if somebody got lost in the woods. It was just past midnight in Ohio, and they just started their shift. But this is what happens, Cristina. They get out of the car. The first officer is on the right front of the patrol car. The officer that's driving He approaches, but he sees a light over his shoulder. So he turns around, and over the woods is this craft, this cone-shaped craft. It's lighting up everything. Both of the deputies see it, right? It stops over their car. They freak out. You know what they did? I'm not
What?
making this up. They jumped in the car, rolled up the windows, and locked the doors. They said that was their safe space, and they stayed there until the craft went away. Their engine started, and then they began to chase it. Yeah, but that's what you do. Your car is your safe space, isn't it? You don't want that thing lifted up, which we've got a couple of cases like that, don't we?
Oh yes. Oh yes. It's pretty scary. And there have also been well, if you look at Mothman, in that case, people were hiding in their cars there as well. They were rolling up the windows in fear. When you hear Bigfoot stories, the people immediately run to their car and hope that they
Claw
will be
marks on
safe.
the hood, right?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
you
Oh
know what I
yeah.
mean?
Freaky
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But good evidence. It's the
Yeah,
evidence
like,
that we
well,
need.
that's great evidence, and we've got cases like that we're going to cover today.
We do. We're going to go in chronological order. And next, we're going to touch on Betty and Barney Hill. As we stated, we're not covering the whole case because I know that you're familiar with it, but just the details on the cars. And here, this took place between September 19th to September 20th of 1961. And this one, I mean, this is one of the first alien abduction stories that really took notice in the media. It's one that really set a foundation for what the abduction phenomenon is about. And more so in this case, what really took this story off during that time frame was the interracial couple. But when it comes to the evidence that was on the car or the car being involved in the story, Jimmy, what happened?
Well, I've interviewed Kathleen Martin, the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, many times. And she has told she was there when all of this went down. And I'm talking about the car side of the incident. So after everything happens, they make it home. In the morning, Betty calls Kathleen's mom, Betty's sister. And they all drive over. They're freaked out, flying saucers and all of this. But Kathleen says, they went out to the car and they saw that there were shiny circles, concentric circles, by the way, which is very bizarre, on the car's trunk. And that these were new, these were fresh. And Betty and Barney, then with the rest of the family, Kathleen's mom, Betty's sister, and Kathleen, they were all there when somebody took out a compass. And I think it was probably Barney, who's got a compass, probably the man of the house. But they moved the compass around the car and the needle was freaking out on the car. All right. And when they moved it up to the spot, then it really went nuts. Kathleen described the needle as spinning. Now, this was a witness that morning, the morning after their abduction experience. Kathleen Martin was there. She said that when they pulled the compass away, it would stop. And she said she was a witness to that. Now, that is definitely magnetic, like the car was magnetized. And whatever caused the concentric circles that were on the hood of the car, possibly something touched it, made those designs on the car through the paint, and magnetically charged the vehicle. Now, I can't explain it, but Kathleen was a witness to this.
Well, not only that, but when they were driving through the White Mountains of New Hampshire, they noticed that these lights in the sky were following their car.
That's right.
And like this object just drew closer and closer, and they weren't able to make out what they described as kind of like this large spacecraft containing multiple humanoid figures that were visible through the windows in the craft. And this craft was following their car. Now, these memories weren't recalled dur- during and after, like during and right after the encounter, but it was under regression hypnosis that they began to really start pulling out the details on what they witnessed that night.
Well, yes, yes, yes. And I think it's important to note here that when they got home, and they woke up the next day, what they did remember was everything happening up to the first encounter of the craft in the middle of the street. But they remembered seeing it. They remembered seeing it in the sky. They
Right.
remember it following them. All right. And they later had that missing time chunk. All right.
Yeah, two
So,
hours.
yeah, about 2 hours. And they didn't realize, all they knew is they arrived home much later than they should have. But leading up to that, that's what Betty said to her aunt or to her sister over the phone. It's like, we saw a UFO last night and it was following us home. And that's when the family came over, and that's when they found the magnetic anomaly on the car with, again, concentric circles were imprinted on the hood, the trunk of the car.
And there's also a bunch of other evidence as well, like tears and kind of like dirt marks on the dress of Betty as well. And I think, weren't there dents on the car, Jimmy? Or no?
Okay, so yes, there were. I don't think for the family at the time, they looked over the whole car and saw all kinds of things that were wrong with it versus the previous day. Okay, all right. So they noticed all of these things, but definitely what stood out to them were the concentric circle designs on the hood of the car and the compass over those concentric circles going nuts and spinning, which just doesn't happen to a compass. That was something that was very, very strange. Their case, as they revealed more and more, Barney remembers a disturbance on the back of the car while he was driving. He remembers hearing stuff and hearing things that weren't normal. So it seems to me, I think to most researchers that look into this case, that yes, that craft was behind them, was following them, and was messing with their car, probably trying to get them to pull over.
And ask them about their car insurance, right? For a car extended warranty is what they really wanted. This, I had to. This next one is probably the most famous case that people think about when they're talking about UFOs affecting cars. And this one took place in 1979 when Marshall Court Deputy Val Johnson encountered a UFO in Minnesota that caused substantial damage to his Ford patrol car. Here's an image here. That's not it. Here it is. It's in the museum now, which is very cool.
Yeah, it's a famous car today. There it sits.
Oh,
there
yeah.
it sits as it was the day after the incident, the day of the incident. There it is.
That's right. So you can see the window shattered as Val Johnson had described this spherical metallic ball of light smashing into it. It also ruined those radio, Jimmy, you know what they're called. You know, on the car you
Antenna.
have like that an antenna. See, we don't
Yes.
have those anymore. So it's just kind of that
You know,
word
my
is no
Jeep,
longer in
my
my
Jeep,
vocabulary.
my Jeep has one, and I'm
No
so
way. Is it
proud.
from like 1995?
No, it's brand new, but there it is. Yeah, yeah, I have an antenna. I love it. I'm so proud of it.
I just can't
I
imagine
am.
televisions using to have antennas. You need to like kind of move them around to get signal. That's
I
beyond me.
I actually have two antennas that come out of my head, but my headphones pull them back so you don't get to see them on the show.
Dang. I've
Yeah.
never seen them. I
Yeah.
feel disappointed.
No, I hide them. I wear a lot of hats.
I'm not gonna get into that.
Wow,
So in this case,
Christina stumped. Lack of words. It does not happen too often. Yeah. So let's get back to Val Johnson. There he
yes,
is right there. This is an incredible case.
it is. It is. And also, he had mentioned that initially he mistook the lights that he was seeing in the sky as an aircraft's landing lights. And then the unidentified light rapidly approached his vehicle at an incredible speed, resulting in the sound of breaking glass and an intense white light that overwhelmed Johnson before he lost consciousness for about 40 minutes.
That's what
And
he
then
says.
upon regaining awareness, he immediately radio dispatch reporting something had attacked his car, not really knowing what to say. So he stated, "I don't know how to explain it, just something strange attacked my car." Could Okay, let's imagine this just for a moment, Jimmy. You're on the other side of the dispatch. You're the one receiving the calls, and one of your men says, "I don't really know how to explain it, but something strange just smashed into my car, ruined my car." What would be the next step after that statement?
I'd call him out for being a liar and drinking on the job. No,
Ooh.
that's what you would do. You would, to somebody listening to that in law enforcement is listening to somebody's excuse for damaging their patrol car, and they've got to come up with a story, right? I hit a deer, something, you know what I mean? You just make something up, and that's what you would think. He reported, this was in Stephen, Minnesota, everybody, and it's 2 a.m. in the morning. Anything happens, early in the morning, and law enforcement is right there with it. But he says he saw the beam of light in front of him on the road, and that the beam came towards him. The other thing that you brought up, the landing lights. When you see an aircraft approaching you and it's got its landing lights on, you don't see at first the red and green navigation lights. You don't see those because the white light is so bright. But if you look long enough, or as it gets closer to you, your eyes adjust and you see those navigation lights. All right.
Right.
He didn't see them. And that's when he kind of freaked. He's like, wait a minute. This is a ball of light without navigation lights. And so it comes up to him and lights up his car. That's what he said.
It lights up his car, it smashed his windshield, it bent multiple antennas, it broke a red emergency light on the roof, shattered one of the headlights, and there's even a noticeable dent on the hood.
Now
That is just
it goes further. And remember, he said that this bright light was so bright he couldn't see anything. He could only hear what was going on. Right? He was listening to glass breaking. Right? And so he's unconscious now for 39 minutes. And when he woke up, this is the dun. Wristwatch isn't working, and his vehicle's clock stopped for 14 minutes. The windshield,
dun, dun.
windshield shattered, headlights broken, red emergency light is damaged, and of course, his radio antenna is bent.
So after this happened, and the media takes a whiff of it, as we're seeing a newspaper clipping on screen right here, a Center for UFO Studies in Chicago went ahead and did an investigation on this, and they discovered several unusual clues that elevated this case above the typical reports. First, being the credibility of the encounter was so significant that Newsweek magazine ranked it among modern history's most compelling and credible UFO encounters in a 2019 retrospective article. And Johnson initially participated in media coverage, including an appearance on ABC's Good Morning America, but eventually withdrew from public attention as the scrutiny began causing strain on his family relationships. And this is in some ways similar to the Lonnie Zamora incident, where you have a policeman coming forward, sharing the story, the media grabs it, but then he was labeled as the UFO policeman.
Right.
And in this case, for Val Johnson, there's so many very similar stories like his, where he is just chewed up and spit out by the media, by the overall general public, some believing him, many not believing him. But this case is so important and it's so remarkable because there is physical evidence on the car, and we have the person to tell the story as to what happened. And the as you had mentioned, Jimmy, and as Zenza Bill had mentioned in the live chat, the clock stopped working on a stopwatch and the car's clock stopped working as well. So
Yeah.
to get those accurately, to click them at the same time to stop is possible, but it's difficult. Why would a policeman put his credentials on the line to lie about this whole UFO situation? If anything, it did him a lot more harm than good.
Yeah, you brought up the Center of for UFO Studies, and that's J. Allen Hynek. So they came in and I brought that up earlier. I was reading his book last night. I'm in the middle of it, and I've read it many times. It's just a great book, The Case for UFOs. And the other part about this, and Hynek talks about this in his book, what is key here is who are the witnesses? Do we have more than one witness? J. Allen Hynek said, look, if I had, he had two sightings. He had one of a craft of an object and one of a light. But he said both times he saw them by himself. There's no sense in him reporting it. And who reports a UFO case? And especially one step further, who reports a UFO case when they are by themselves? That's an important part about all of this. And he talks about police officers a lot. Law enforcement are people too. They are people, just your average citizen that reports a case. You're subject to everything that comes at you. You are, and it's rough. Police, law enforcement, military, we hold them to a whole nother standard, right? Airline pilots, we hold them to another standard. And the ridicule that comes to them, career ending, it's a different type of focus that comes upon them, and they are people. So maybe they don't want to report these things. And when it comes to Val Johnson, and you report something like this, you're alone and your car gets damaged, right?
It's not a good look.
No, most people would say you're alone, your car gets damaged, you got to make something up, right? Why not blame it on UFOs? Blame it on Bigfoot. And that's what happened to Val. Like I said, law enforcement are people too. And how much can you take? Don't know. But for Val, he had enough. He had to back out.
He did. Now, as for today, the car is now in a museum. It's in the County Historical Society Museum in Warren, Minnesota, where it has become simply known as just the UFO car, like that is the title. And the museum has embraced their pretty unusual piece of local history, selling UFO car merchandise,
For
including
sure.
t-shirts and stickers and things to put on the back of your car as well, because if you can sell it, why not? Right. And in this case, this is one of the main things that brings this small town, Warren, Minnesota, to its fame. If I were to be in Minnesota, I would go to this museum just to see the car and at least take one selfie with it.
Yeah,
Just
over
one.
the years, I've seen so many videos and stuff on this car and where it sits in the museum, and I've always thought, man, I want to go. I want to go and I want to go check that out because it's there. It's like Betty Hill's dress, right? Betty and
Right.
Barney Hill's car, right? Bob Lazar's Corvette. I want to see that too as well. But
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
yeah. But here it is. Did it happen? Is it a case of evidence? Does this represent that? I don't know. It's a great case, and Val Johnson has always stuck to it. And also, before we move on, this case had a little bit of everything, didn't it? Right? It had a shiny orb spotted in the sky, police on patrol, lights up the car, missing time, clocks have failed, and then of course the damage to the car. This case had it all.
It did. And that's why the media probably paid so much attention to it during that time frame, because of all of the pieces of information, all of the details and the evidence as well. And then his background of him being a policeman. It's like, how could you avoid the case? How could you avoid the story in the news? Of course you're going to read it. It's going to be on the main page probably. But this next one that we're going to be covering also gained a lot of traction in the media, and that is the Cash-Landrum Incident. Jimmy, tell us about this one.
Well, okay. No, I'm going to hand this off to you. I didn't know that we were going to cover this today, but just let me say this. This case was not only about a UFO incident, the craft, whatever they were, black helicopters. We've got all of that, but we've got sickness, the stuff that happened, the burns on the family, of course, the UFO side of it, and the car side of it, and it affected this family forever. Again, like the Levelland case, to me, one of the most supported and strongest UFO incidents in history.
And this one took place December 29th, 1980 in Dayton, Texas. And as Jimmy had mentioned, it resulted in pretty severe physical consequences for the three witnesses, being Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and her 7-year-old grandson, Colby Landrum, as they were just driving home like any other day on State Road 1485. And there, they noticed a pretty unusual light above the tree line. Initially, just like with Val Johnson, they mistook it as an aircraft. But then they soon realized that they were observing something way more extreme than just your average aircraft. The witnesses encountered a very large diamond-shaped craft. Here's one. Here's a drawing of it on screen, created by a newspaper. And it hovered directly above the road, just ahead of them. And then the object emitted a very intense fiery exhaust with visible flames shooting downward while producing a distinctive beeping sound.
Right.
So then Betty Cash stopped the vehicle as they were confronted by this strange object. And then the heat radiating from the craft was so extreme that the car's dashboard, began to visibly melt, so they say, providing this very interesting visual for the witnesses. But then on top of that, as Jimmy had mentioned, black helicopters were seen. Everyone every one of the witnesses in the car got severely sick. One of them had what kind of looked like radiation burns. They attempted to talk to the military in Texas, and they were received no information from them as asking questions of, is this yours? Is this your craft? Like, you hurt me, I want to sue you kind of vibe. And
That's exactly what they said.
yeah,
They were looking for who was responsible. Now, I'm not going to make light of this, Christina. I don't want to sound like I'm making a joke, but that family was toasted. The burns and the physical stuff that they went through as a mother and a grandmother, you're going to want to hold somebody responsible for that. They saw the helicopters. They went to the Air Force, and they got shut down. They were roasted. It was. I just can't imagine going through that.
well, they also experienced severe nausea, uncontrollable vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, and burning sensations across their skin, and some radiation poisoning as well.
That's right.
But Betty Cash, this lady right here, suffered the most severe effects, which required hospitalization as her conditions rapidly deteriorated. Medical records documented her symptoms extensively, showing physical injuries that couldn't be easily dismissed of like, oh, you just have a little bit of a fever or something like that. So both Cash and Landrum experienced persistent health problems for the remainder of their lives, with Betty eventually passing away exactly 18 years later on December 29th, 1998. And Vicky Landrum survived until 2007, but continued to suffer from health complications that she attributed to her encounter.
Yeah, and here's, if anybody out there, and I have, if you have ever experienced sun poisoning, you've been out all day in the sun, you get burnt, and then the next day you get the after effects of that because it's radiation. Your body goes through trauma, but disorientation, nausea, your body is just reacting to that. Well, it'll eventually pass. But that's not what happened to the family. Okay, it didn't pass. So I think that it was very apparent to the government and to everybody else that was involved with this case that they got a heavy dose of radiation. And this is lifelong lasting effects. That's what happened. The government steps in, pays for the medical bills, but said nothing happened. We didn't do it. And they never took things a step further. You want somebody to say they're sorry. You want somebody to say, okay, it was us. But no, the government never did that, but they did pick up the medical bills.
At least that part is nice. But when they witnessed these black helicopters surrounding this diamond-shaped craft, of course, the first initial idea is this all must be theirs. And then when they didn't confess to it for their entire lives, for Cash and Landrum, obviously it's incredibly frustrating. This next case that we're covering is here's how the craft looked. This next case that we're covering might have to be one of the freakiest ones. If I were to be honest with you,
yes.
And this one is not in the United States. This one is in Australia in the year 1988. Very specifically, this took place January 20th, 1988, when the Knowles family experienced, in this case, what would become one of Australia's most widely discussed UFO encounters while they were just in this very remote area of Australia. And Faye Knowles, who we're seeing here, the eldest one in this image, along with her 3 adult children, Patrick, Sean, and Wayne, were driving their 1984 blue Ford across the desolate stretch going through Australia from southern to western Australia border. And then they see this strange egg-shaped object not only follow them and then surpass them and go away, but then come back to the car and hover right on top of it. This particular case sounds very much like you're baiting the prey. It's a cat and mouse, because how the family described this encounter is that this craft was following their car in the middle of the night, kind of creepy, like a cat ready to pounce on a mouse. And then the craft is like, "Oh, just kidding." And then it flies away. And the family thought, "Okay, it's over. We're good. What the heck was that?" I felt fear. Then all of a sudden, the craft comes back from the tree lines, and this time it's not only following the car again from behind, it is right on top of the car. And it was so close that the mother was able to actually touch the craft. She puts her hand outside of the window, touches almost the roof of the car, but in this case the craft, because it was literally right on top of it. And she's like, "Ah, that's weird." She brings her hand back in, and it's covered in black dust, black soot, out of nowhere. That shouldn't have happened. And then, right after that, the entire car is covered, filled with black soot that came, at least they believe, came from the craft.
Moon dust.
Moon
It was
dust.
moon
Is that
dust. Yeah, it was moon dust. I don't know. It's always moon dust, Cristina. It's always moon dust. You got to anyway, let me tell you go back to the picture of the family.
Sure.
What most people don't know, the guy on the right in the white suit, he's the singer from In Excess. Yeah. Okay, so moving on. In Excess, Cristina, before your time, the biggest band out of Australia, besides Men at Work. She has no idea what I'm talking about, everybody. Oh, okay, so in the chat, how great was In Excess? Were they the best band out of Australia besides the Bee Gees? Yeah, everybody's going to back me up on this, Cristina. Here's the crazy thing about this case. Cars were passing. Cars were following. Witnesses were all over the place. All saw the same thing. They saw the craft over the car. They saw the car get lifted. And the part that, for me, as a parent, if I was alone, I could kind of deal with it. I would freak out. But when you've got your family in your car, in your sanctuary, and a UFO comes up and above the car, picks the car up and drops it, 10 feet in the air. That's what the witnesses said. Witnesses said the car was lifted 10 feet. And when the car hit the ground, tires exploded.
That's right.
Yeah. Witnesses. It wasn't just the family and the singer from In Excess, by the way. Yeah, that's what, for me, going back to what J. Allen Hynek says in his book, The Case for UFOs, when I look at all of these cases, first thing, who are the witnesses? How many of the witnesses were there outside of the principal person reporting the case? Who supports this case? That's why I want to, at that point, when I have that, I want to jump in and apply the science. That's what we have here. We have multiple witnesses all reporting the same thing.
And I'm going to add some more to that. But first, Jane's Coffee, thank you so much for the super sticker. It says, "Thank you, Cristina," with cute little emojis. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. Something else to mention here is that when these tires popped, an investigation was done by the local police to get a better understanding as to what happened. And there was no plausible conclusion that the policeman could create or even generate, stating, we don't really know how your tires popped. All of them, with the evidence that we have so far, with our understanding that we have so far, aside from the story that you told us that your car was lifted off the ground and then dropped immediately. That is the only plausible explanation for how all of these tires popped. It didn't look like you just ran over a nail or some glass or something, but it was like these gaping holes that were seen in the tires. And so this story took off. It was unbelievable. And Dubstep, thank you so much for the super sticker as well. It grabbed the media by storm, and as we can tell from the mother, Faye, here, she was not really happy with the publicity. She just wanted to go with her everyday life, mind her own business, but the media took the story and made it into an almost unbearable creature, where they were doing all these different interviews, sharing their experiences. Their experience was only one, and these details that we're seeing here of this object went right on top of the car. There's a slight dent on the roof of the car. It dropped the car. The tires were burst. The car was filled with black soot from the craft, which was
Moon dust.
also on her hand as well, which Jimmy's saying is moon dust, but who knows if it really was. And and also the psychological fear of being followed. As I had mentioned a little bit earlier, this craft followed the car and then disappeared and then came back. But the second time, it did the things that we would classify as more physical evidence to prove that it was there. And thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica, so cool. Thank you, Jessica. Here's the thing. Oh, by the way, everybody knows that's not Michael Hutchins from NXS. Come on. I was doing that for Cristina. It was a test to see.
Oh, well, then I failed. I failed the test.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't even know these bands. AC/DC
Really?
is like as far as it goes.
Oh, that's good. So you can't name an NXS song?
I'd never even heard of the band.
How about one of their albums, like Shabu Shabak?
What about like Rasputin?
Are they from Australia?
No, I don't even know who sings that song, but I like that song.
Oh,
someone's gonna just like facepalm right now. They're like, "How do you not know the singer of Rasputin?" I don't, but I enjoy that song.
I didn't know that there is. No, I don't know. But the one thing, that song to this day, when I hear that, it takes me where I need to go. In Excess was just absolutely amazing. But again, back to this case before we run out of time. I keep going back to J. Allen Hynek. And as somebody that has been researching the subject for most of my life, not my adult life, I've been doing this for 50 years. The one thing, I just said the name of the In Excess song. Yeah, that was pretty good. What? Yeah, as part of my statement here. But here's the thing. I need people to support the story. If it's just one person telling the story, then it's the fisherman that let the fish go that was this big, right? I almost caught it. Well, yeah. All right. But that's just a story. But you need the supporting stuff. And J. Allen Hynek, the way that he points it out, that's what I need. I need that spider web to go out and have the supporting cast there to come in. And do they report the same thing? And that's what we have in this case. As fantastic as it is, as insane as it sounds, there are witnesses that corroborate the family's experience. And I think that's what's most important.
I'm with you on that one. It's always better to have more than one witness. And Paul Anderson, thank you for the super chat. Thank you, all of you guys. I really appreciate it. We have one more case to cover. This one's a very modern case and one that I didn't know about until today. Jamie, did you know about this case?
Eddie Meireles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what we're going to do? This case.
Oh,
okay. All right. No. Go back to that first photograph. Go back to. Okay. Meireles. Now, this all occurred back in 2011, and he took a bunch of pictures and showing this. I'm going to say alleged. I normally don't say that. Right here, I'm going to say alleged. Craft above a hiking trail, and in Brazil. But lots of things happened in this case, and I'll hand it back to Cristina. But what I want to do is have everybody look at these photographs. Go ahead. Let's look at this first one.
Here's a zoom in on this one. And then here is Eddie's face. He's like, what's going on?
It's the world's first UFO selfie.
In 2011, where a selfie, the selfie word hadn't even come out then.
Right.
It came out, I think, in like 2017 or 2018.
Right. He's got the right to claim something here. He does. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay. Do you have another one?
I have these two to show his face and then to show
because he's got a whole series of photographs out there all showing the same thing. You don't have the lit up one or two? There's a couple of the lit up.
Yeah, I can find it.
But what I find interesting about these photographs is the apparent space between him and the object.
Yeah, very close.
Right? You just kind of back up and you go, these look pretty real. You know what the problem with this case is? We're going to go further into it before we run out of time here in a minute. But he was alone.
Oof.
Yeah.
Buddy system. At this point, just never leave the house without another person. If you want to see a UFO and you want to be credible to many people, you can't see it alone. So just find someone, stitch them to yourself or Velcro or something.
No, tie a string to him. Yeah, tie a string. Tie a string to him. That's what you do. You tie a string to him. Okay. So what happened in this case?
Let me tell you. I was trying to get the picture, but that's okay. So in this case, it took place February 10th, 2011, where this Brazilian ufologist. Ufologist.
What do you do? What do you do? I'm a ufologer. Hey, Cristina, merch. We got to merch this. I want a ufologer beanie. Ufologer. That is gold. That is gold.
I feel embarrassed, but needless to say.
No. That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yeah, forget ufologist. Just you are now a ufologer, a UFO researcher. Thank you, Max. If the story starts with once upon a time, you're going to hear a fairy tale. If it starts with... That's true. That's funny.
I can't concentrate.
No, I can't either. So in this case...
It's the ufologer in me. I can't concentrate. What were we talking about? Oh, Eddie Meireles, Brazil, 2011. Take it away, Cristina. Ufologer. You're so good. As far as ufologers go, you're one of the best.
I think I might be the only one in the field in this case. So I could only be the best. I'm the only one.
Man.
Yeah, it's official. It's going to be in our vocabulary now. It's going to be in all of our shows. We got to say it at least once. And you're going to have like a bingo card, right? And all the times that someone says ufologer, just
it started here. This is now time-stamped, bookmarked. Ufologer started at 3:28 p.m. on March 13th Pacific time, 2025 on Mysteries with the History with
You
Cristina
got
and
it
Jimmy.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm a
So-
ufologer. I don't mess things up.
Let's speed through this because we're already at overtime. But here, so he reported seeing this UFO in the sky, and it had significantly, my gosh, damaged his vehicle while he was visiting a national park in Brazil. And then the incident occurred near a hiking trail leading up to an area called the Waterfall of Purification within like the park's boundaries. And according to Edie's account, the encounter began when he noticed an unusual glowing bright object that was just inside. When he was inside his parked car, it was just the object was outside. And as the light intensified, his vehicle engine just shut down completely. And this is a more recent case that we've heard of publicly of someone experiencing this. And yes, there are pictures, but when we see pictures this clear at this time in modern day, it, as Jimmy had mentioned, it's a little sketchy, but his background as being a ufologer, you really want to add credit to what he has to say.
Well, but and thank you, Diego. Very cool. Thank you for that. When
you,
we
Diego,
look,
and
go
Android.
back to the selfie of this
Yeah, absolutely.
Brazilian ufologer. There he is. That I see depth of. Thank you, Diego. Cristina, stop.
I was going to tell you that.
Ufologers
Stop
don't make that kind of
pressing.
mistake. Ufologers don't make that kind of mistake. I see. I could be wrong here, but I see depth of field in this shot. And I don't know how large the craft is, but it looks like it's behind that tree. All of this could be a play on, I could be imagining this as we do. We don't have a real way to triangulate. We don't have the size of this craft, but this looks, that's kind of hard to debunk. Now you bring in somebody that's a professional with imaging and they could probably figure things out. But this, when I first heard about this case and I saw this image, I was like, well, man, that looks pretty legit. The other images that he's got, okay, all right. It's this one. Feel bad for his face, but the look on his face. But this makes the case feel a little more legit to me.
Well, he also claimed upon looking up that he observed a hovering UFO positioned directly above his vehicle. And then rather than remaining in the car, he made a decision that most people wouldn't. And he got out of the car in order to document the encounter and to take these pictures that we are seeing here. And he had captured several photographs of the object, including what would later be described as what Jimmy had mentioned, the first UFO selfie, a self-portrait with the glowing disc, orb-shaped object clearly visible in the background, as we are seeing on screen. And then the images showed a distinctly defined metallic looking craft with a dome like structure emitting a bright circular glow against the dark sky landscape. Which I can go back to this image to get a better understanding of what we're talking about here. And in this case, his vehicle, Eddie's vehicle, like the electrical system just completely failed. And according to his account, every electrical component in the car had been completely burned out, rendering the vehicle entirely non-functional. He wasn't as lucky as Val Johnson or the Knowles family or the Cash-Landrum incident where their car stopped and then started working again. In this case, his stuff was just completely damaged. There was no way to fix it from just taking out the key and putting it back in and hoping for the best. He had to get that actually checked out by a mechanic or getting a brand new car.
What a great show today. Cristina, perfect show. And it just feels great to be back in the chair with you and and doing this. It's just great. You're great. And seriously, and I'm not just saying this, you are truly one of the best ufologers that I know. So thank you for that. I'll just tell everybody really quick before I get out of here tonight on Fade to Black, Paul Anthony Wallace is back with us. And tonight we're going to be talking about the truth of ET contact. All of that and much more tonight on Fade to Black. Cristina, till next time, I'll see you right here next week. Thank you so much. Everybody be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's been quite a few weeks, but now he's back and we are back on track with Mysteries with a History. You know how he calls his audience Fadernauts? We've been doing the show such a long time, years now, at four years. And you know what? We never had a cool name like Fadernauts. What if those listening and watching are called ufologers? Like, that's a pretty cool name. I want to hear it from you in the live chat, in the comments as well. Jimmy's kind of liking the idea backstage, but I want to hear it from you. Would you like to be addressed as the ufologers? You think that'd be very fun? If you enjoyed the show, hit that like button right down below and subscribe if you haven't already, as I do several shows right here every single week. And if you want to stay up to date with UFO news, case studies, interviews, and so much more, this is the channel for you. Before you head out, you want to keep an eye on ufonews.co to get your international UFO news updates. Anytime UFOs are mentioned in the news, my website is an aggregate website, so you will be informed right when it happens. I use it for all of my UFO news update episodes. I find it helpful. I want it free. I want it to be a resource for your research every single day. If you want to be a ufologer, you gotta also follow ufonews.co. I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live. All the super chats today, thank you, and the super stickers, all of my amazing YouTube members and Patreon members. April 12th is going to be our live online event. If you want to play UFO trivia games, win exclusive merch, and interact with a small group of like-minded people, that will be on April 12th. It will be online, and the way to participate is to be a Patreon member. That link is in the description box below. That is it for today. I will see you next time. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies. If you enjoy the strange and the mysterious, UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, this channel is for you. So make sure to subscribe, as I do 3 videos right here every single week, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of the bonus content I post right here.